We are live. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to talk about 6 real award sites that have completely blown my mind ever since they came in, because we're going to take apart 6 tiny little award sites, talk about what worked with them, what did not work with them, and yes, there is so much stuff that did not work with some of these sites, and I'm so happy to be able to point that out, to be able to talk about everything that's going to happen today. Let's get started. The first site that we're going to be talking about today is going to be escape.cafe. I'm not even sure if half of this is working. Let's just get started from the start. This is the first site that we're talking about today, and it's going to be a fun one, especially because of the elements that I'm already anticipating this one has. So, the first thing that completely gets me started on the entirety of the site is, where is your padding? And I know this is way too technical, way too quickly. Where is your padding? What's going on? Again, you expect this to be a little bit more immersive, but also, if this was an immersive site from the start, you'd kind of expect it to be telling you that somehow, because you have these zoom animations, fancy effects. Something happens usually when you're getting started with an immersive site. This is not that, and it's kind of exactly why I'm a little bit worried about what's going to happen today. So, as we get started, there is an annoying right side of a menu bar, which is weird, and it's problematic on so many levels. But keeping that aside, let's just start talking about what this site does. You have a video in the background. You have parallax, which is basically scrolling different elements at different speeds, because it's quite visible, the video or the image in the background and the text at the top are scrolling with slightly different speeds, which is exactly why you kind of get an offset vibe when you start scrolling things. Again, normalcy starts to kick in once we're past the hero section, and the hero section does make me worried about a bunch of things, but normalcy does kick in when you start with the general area of the site. But also, they love the word parallax, and you'll see them use this 100 different times now. Like, check it out. You have a simple offset container with limited series that's kind of subtracting out, and you get it to parallax or scroll at different speeds for the entirety, because if you'll notice this really carefully, it does not stay stuck where it started. It internally shifts with the image, and it kind of scrolls at a different speed. And I think this is the only way this site is even trying to take immersive forward. They're just taking all of these different elements and having them scroll at different speeds and directions. And I'm talking about directions because as soon as you start to scroll, the image at the top also kind of goes into a different direction, which is fun, which is absolutely incredible. But you also get a bunch of different elements that work well together, and the only thing that's tying them out to even be special is parallax, which is a statement in its entirety. Now you get another section with a bunch of really huge text and also images. This is turning out to be such an in-your-face site that I'm just looking at it now and I don't have anything to say, because it is what it is, and it's exactly in your face. This is way too simple for me to say anything. It does look like things have been taken from random places, things that shouldn't be there, and they've just been put in front of your face. This is very weird on its own. And then you get to a different section where, once again, you have more text, you have images, and the reason I'm acting very weird with this site is because, yes, they try to do white space. Yes, they try to get different elements, get them to work together. But also, at the same time, you have all of this material working in layers. And I'm trying to get my point across now. You have a lot of different elements as soon as you get started, and then you take every single element apart in layers and you try to get them to scroll on different speeds, and what you end up with is a very awkward looking site, because and let's start talking about the layers, because there are so many layers now. You have this huge layer of ginormous text, which is fine, which is incredible. It scrolls at a different speed compared to the rest of the site. You have the shop now call to action, which arguably should be present everywhere, and it is present, and it remains sticky for as long as it needs to be. then you get across this weird box, and it kind of stays stuck for as long as it needs to be. And I think the repeated use of parallax and it will really start to get to you as soon as you get started inside of this ecosystem. So you get to see this image, and it's scrolling at a different rate, and everything is slightly offset here to the point where it's just very, very awkward. This image also, I would like to point out, if you do start to look at this image very carefully, the hands are kind of at the border, and by the time you're scrolling, there is a little bit of padding building up, which means they've also taken that image as a box, put it apart, added some parallax, and it's just so weird because there is so much parallax going on and a lot of white space absolutely everywhere, and that makes you go, what is going on? This is a very, very awkward site. How am I supposed to say anything to it at all? And it does lead to a very weird experience, because now you have all of this data that was absolutely supposed to be there, and they've just dumped it wherever they wanted to dump it. But when they want to make something special, they'll just take apart one of the text boxes, one of the huge image containers, something that does stand out, and they'll make it scroll at a different rate, which is the entire formula for a site like this. It's very weird to look at, and it's very weird to talk about, but that is exactly what they're doing now, and that's the entirety of their newness, which isn't very negative, but it's not positive as a concept either, because this is very simple, it's very, very janky, did not let me relax into the site, and the entirety of it already has passed. So I do have negative things to say if we're looking at it that way. You have a bunch of different links and addresses and links and social media wherever you'd want to have it, which is nice, but also what's going on here, there is no added structure, and it does make you very, very uncomfortable. Talking about discomfort does come the right weird section that's just present there. This is supposed to be the menu now, and I don't know what to say about it, because I was already unnerved. Yes, you can. Let me just start, because I have so many thoughts now. Yes, you can take some random link, some piece of text, rotate it 90 degrees and place it wherever you want to. That's always been possible on the web, no matter where you go. But the way they've done it is so uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable before things even got started. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because yes, you were supposed to have a menu. Yes, you were supposed to have all of these different things. But when you're putting forward an offer, for example, free shipping, which is what they're doing, you'd want that to be very, very central to your entire message. You'd want that to be visible wherever it is that the user looks at first. And that usually is something that happens either at the top or at a modal or some sort of a weird banner somewhere. But when you try to insert it with a weird rotate your face to even be able to read this, that's when it really does start to become very inconvenient and uncomfortable. I think that's exactly where I'm bothered by the entirety of this. And also I would want to point out here, you get these weird icons on the corner, and you're kind of supposed to deal with them like they're supposed to be the navigation now, which is, again, all of this is possible, but the way they've structured it is very inconvenient. I think it would have been much, much cleaner even as a layout if they'd just gotten rid of the text, because it does not belong there. Some people might argue it does, but it simply does not, because if you imagine this just simply wasn't present, I think this entirety would look like a much cleaner layout, and it would have a lot of white space. I don't think they lacked breathing room with this site. There was a ton of white space for you to float around, but the way they've structured it was not comfortable or convenient. So they do have space, and they do use the ability to have negative space, but I think the way they've just put it wherever the space was present, no strategy whatsoever, makes everything way more inconvenient than it has to be. I think this is a very uncomfortable site for me, especially because it's very visible that they just took the word parallax, ran with it. No strategy whatsoever, which will annoy me until the end of time, which is why I have to give this site a 3 out of 10. 3 out of 10 because this is definitely not the worst site we've seen on this stream. This if you've followed us for any length of time, you know things will get even worse very, very quickly. And yet there is an effort, and yet the effort did not land. And I looked at the entirety of the site, and there was no comfort for anyone, anywhere, anyhow. And that's all I'm going to say about escape.cafe. It does make you want to escape this cafe. That's the final joke I have for this one. This next one is format3.co, and I think something interesting to notice here is this logo of the brand is very, very similar to the Framer logo, which, yes, I will get backlash on that because Framer is just an F logo and that can kind of repeat itself 1,000 times over, but it's very reminiscent of Framer. Is it made in Framer? I think that would be the fun topic that we could find out. Is this site made in Framer? Because the logo of their brand looks like Framer. I have no idea at this point. I think it would take... Can we just search for some sort of a builder? I don't think they would have made it in Framer, but who knows at this point. Wow. I used to use Firefox and now I'm suddenly in Chrome and I have no idea how the dev tools work anymore, which is completely embarrassing, but I am figuring it out. Again, I don't think it's made in Framer just from the look of it, but it's very weird that the logo is exactly like Framer. Getting forward from the point of logos, you do want a couple of special effects when you're getting into any site like this, and they do deliver on that very, very easily. You do get this nice blurry effect that happens as soon as you start hovering over. Not only is a 3D model, not only can you kind of work around with it if you kind of want to drag it, not only is this a 3D model, it does use a couple of shaders to be able to take what's in the background, which is this text, and to be able to look at it with a weird, blurry, glass morphism-ish effect. And that's definitely very, very cool. Other than that, this is a very simple layout, and by simple, it's not a negative point in any way. This is a very, very pretty layout because they've taken every single element that you needed to have, put it exactly where you need to put it, and yet been able to do it with a level of cleanliness that will definitely land them in the thumbs up pile. You get to hijack the cursor, which is nice, because cursor hijacking, yes, it became annoying a couple of months ago because it was absolutely everywhere, but then we saw a bunch of sites on this stream and elsewhere which were just running away from it, and it became too much of that. So now you have a cursor that's actually been hijacked, which makes me happy, honestly. It just does. I know people still hate cursor hijacks, but it's kind of nice because not only are they taking your cursor, they're also giving you the instruction to scroll down, which is absolutely incredible. And now you have the ability to scroll down wherever you want to. I think I would want you guys to rate this site out of 10 as well, because I am going to be very partial now, because they're doing everything that you'd want a site to do right, and that's very good in my eyes. That's just all you'd want in my eyes. You get a video that's playing on its own. We can't play the audio, but I would want to try it after the stream. And then you get the same exact effect that you saw with the last 3D model. You can't work with this 3D model, you can't drag it around, but the shaders, the effects that you had previously, you get to see that again, which is nice, because if you get an effect that actually works for your favor, if you get an effect that actually makes your UI look nice, it is recommended to use it a couple of times over again just to have some consistency, especially because the thing that you're bringing in now is so new to the user. And then you get a really, really nice clean grid of every brand that they've worked with ever, which is nice. You don't see anything wrong with it. And the titles, again, I have to talk about the titles now. Every single time they change a section, every single time they'll bring you a title, it's very, very clear, and it has a ton of white space, and it takes its entire space. It's not ashamed of doing that, which I am happy with, and I'm really, really happy with the fact that they've taken things exactly as they should, given them the space that they should have, and you also are able to see the title stay in the background in case you get confused about what this actually is. So with that said, every single time one of these cards scrolls in, you do get a little bit of a transition. There is a scroll speed that changes, animation that does happen. This isn't very automatic, but they try to go for the very clean dark mode friendly vibe, and it does work out. I would have wanted to see better typography, because again this is very classic, very similar to Arial or Inter, and that does get tiring very, very quickly. But other than that, there isn't really much you can critique on saying this has been done wrong, and there is a lot of animation that goes on into all of these, and you get to see what the title is, who we are, and you also get to see every single image that they'd want you to see, and that's the good thing with fancy animations. When you have a ton of images to show, when you have something that you definitely want the user to see, putting it in some of this twisted horizontal layout version of things does make your life very, very easy, because now the user gets exactly what you would want them to get, which is absolutely incredible. And then you get a bunch of text. I was hoping there would be an image here, but unfortunately there isn't. Either it did not load, or the people just forgot about them. Either ways, it's not the worst thing in the world. I'll deal with it. It's fine. Awards and recognition, again, it's incredible the fact that they have taken each of these links, each of these list elements, and they've had an animation in the background. You get to see one of these, you get to see them pop off in the background of the screen, you get to see things work out exactly as you'd want them to, and it does drive a lot of attention, which is incredible, which is giving recognition to the section about awards and recognition, and it does work out really well. So I'm happy about that without any doubt. And then you get to see, once again, curious by nature, shaping new thoughts and ideas, a blog section. You get to see a blog section again, and the way they've done it is actually quite nice, because no, they haven't stuck to any standard grid based layouts, but the way they've let things take up space, this and this are almost identical, things take up exactly the amount of space that they need to. The fact that they've not stuck to only vertical, only horizontal image first layouts still works and still is fine for me. Even if they're not very symmetrical, they're very clean, and they do justify each section being different on its own, which was already difficult in the news site that we saw yesterday. So I think with that said, a near perfect site. And then we get to the footer, which is also nice. You get to see the time zones, you get to see their locations, you get to see the text and the titles. I love the fact that they're very, very clear with all of these titles, and surprise, surprise, there is actually another effect that is taking place here, another animation, an Easter egg for you to find. I think it's really nice, the fact that they've taken everything that they should have, put it exactly where they should have, not stepped off of any major rules of basic UI UX design. For example, not breaking any major white space rules, not breaking any major readability or contrast issues, and still made something like this work. So I think it's really nice the fact that they've done this. They've put their tagline, let's make your project in a marquee tag, which just keeps on rotating over and over again, but it does drive the message forward. So all in all, format 3 is a 10 out of 10 site for me, because yes, they have a couple of small issues, but that's just what happens when you're actually making a site like this in regular use, and it does work really, really well, all things considered. You can try to see a couple of the links at the top, and I am interested, because yes, they try to put all of this in a grid gallery and it still works. I am concerned at why these images are repeating. It might just be because they're trying to make the grid repeat forward, and they're trying to show us these same exact projects again, but also top and bottom isn't the only way you can work with this screen. You can also go diagonally or horizontally while scrolling, which is nice, and you only get to see this with a trackpad. So over and over, 10 out of 10, format 3, a near perfect site, because everything that you'd want to have, you have. And I'm giving it 10 out of 10, especially because every single site that we've been seeing recently, in today's stream, in yesterday's stream, in the last couple of days, has been less than perfect and has been less than what we expected, which is finally changing because of format 3. So let me know what you think of this one. I give this a 10 out of 10. The next site that we're talking about, backstage.bonjovi.com. Again, no idea what's going to happen here. The fact that there is an emblem of a heart with wings with a sword inside is already dramatic enough for me to panic. I have no idea what the site is going to have. I was hoping it would be related to music, but it isn't, and that's the more concerning fact now. Let's just accept whatever cookies they give us, because why would we not? And I have no idea what to do already. Enter experience. This is much more cryptic in terms of user experience, because if you have to read an entire paragraph to even be able to get started with your site, is that really you winning? Is it? It's really the question of the day. Again, very simple layout, does remind me, especially because now we're talking about music and legacy and Bon Jovi, does remind me of the microsite for Eras Tour Taylor Swift, because you had all of these different sections, all of these different albums, and exactly this layout was the one that worked there. So again, very common pattern in music, especially in 2025 right now, and that's why I'm not very worthy of, and that's why I'm not very praise forward with this site. This isn't the fanciest thing I've seen. In fact, it's a bit of a repetition, but they've executed it well, which is brownie points, definitely. You get the title, you get your call to action arrow, you get to see all of this different text. Again, I am a little bit concerned at why it's so small and just in a corner, but other than that, it's not the worst thing in the world. And you get to see the number of artifacts as well, which is a cool fact. Let's just see what one of these do. Again, why was this navigation bar not present in the first and the second pages? You could argue for style reasons, but also it would have made our lives a little bit easier. Again, a 3D model, very, very cool. No idea what this office is going to entail, but let's see. Again, very, very cool. The fact that you can take awards and explore them. And the way they've done this site is, this isn't a 3D site. They've just taken a couple of 3D models, put it as the guards at the gate, and now you get to start off with a nice 3D model, get exploring, choose whatever you would want to choose, and then you get back to a very, very simple formal site, which is great. And I would want to point out here, the simple formal site isn't a very good site, but that fact kind of gets run along because now you have this incredible 3D model which was of the office, and I do think there are a couple of these present across the site, and it does do a very good job at making you forget the bad things that happened in the past. Again, very boring layout, very, very boring layout, but they've put elements clearly, and there is no text, which is not impressing me at all. Again, for someone who doesn't know what these awards are, I would be very confused. You can buy these items, but some of them you can't buy, but you don't know what you're buying either, which is my entire problem with this. Again, it's very funny, the fact that I have no idea what any of these are, and you're supposed to understand. A little bit of text would have gone a really long way in helping them. And as I said before, again, another 3D model that you could work with. This might just be a simple rotating kind of 3D thing, but there is a bunch of 3D models going across the site, and they do a very good job at putting them at the correct place so that you ultimately forget the fact that they forgot text and they forgot to explain anything at all. Explanation is really where they do lack. Unless someone has been in real time observing all of these, been very close to this field, you would not get what any of these are. Even if you wanted to find out what these awards are, you would not be able to do that, which is very weird to me, and I have no idea what this does. Again, I would want to point out here, once you get to another simple page, things do get very, very boring. Check it out. This is very, very boring, especially if you look at the way Shopify has taken e-commerce sites and switched things around. Very, very boring. No colorful call to action for the buy now, which is a prerequisite if you're going into the e-commerce sector of things. So again, very, very boring as a site, but the whole steel, heart, sword, feather dynamic works really, really well when you combine it with 3D models, and it does a really good job at covering things up. I am once again concerned because I don't think we can go back to the site that we came from. I think we're at the shop of the site now, which is very, very scary to me now, because we don't even know if we're going to get to go back. Wow, we just came to the one-way street of backstage shop, and I think we're already away from the site that we started with. This is very, very embarrassing for the site, because you can't really go back to the page you started from, and you have the option once when you get started to choose what you'd want to choose, and now I'm going and changing URLs, which never should have happened in the first place. This is a terrible user experience. Is it good UI? Maybe, but it's just all show, no content from a site's point of view. Let's look at the road. Again, I have no high expectations, none at all. They had an incredibly working, nice looking navigation, and they chose to throw it away. I was saying before they'd use 3D models again. 3D models were there for the office, they're there for the road, but problem is you can't go back to the office 3D model, which was actually one of the good things about their site, unless you choose to type out backstage.bonjovi.com and then scroll along, choose that choice again, which is so many steps of user experience that the user is just going to leave, which is all I can say. Again, very, very intriguing work. This 3D model business did not happen very easily for anyone at all, and yet they'll instantly get rid of it. Like, I clicked on one of these buttons and they'll instantly get rid of it, and now we're back to the same exact format. overall, I think I've already seen the stuff that I had to see. This was the site that we were talking about, backstagebonjovi.com. What are your thoughts on this? Because I am trying to rate it out of 10, and yet this is a very, very confusing, mixed reaction-ish site, because I have no idea how you go about rating a site that's trying to put in good elements, but as soon as they take you to the shop which they wanted you to go to so desperately, there is no text about anything at all, no descriptions to be found. It's a complete empty alleyway, and then you have no idea how to go back to the home page either. And this is very weird. How are these things just coming up randomly? You had a navigation bar at the top and you could go back, and I have no idea what's going on anymore. What even is this? How did this even start happening? What's coming soon? I think they lack very clear basic instructions on what these explanations are. A guided telling of the Bon Jovi story through curated. I don't want a guided telling of the Bon Jovi story. When I come to your site, I think getting to the Bon Jovi story is my entire concern, and it should have happened much, much quicker. User experience wise, I need to give them a 1 out of 10, because they just started with user experience and they dropped the ball completely. User interface wise, because I am biased of the 3D models, because yes, they're not very simple to make, I need to give it a 5 out of 10, because the 3D models worked, and then you had no text explanation for the e-commerce site that you were selling, and the navigation bar is present, but it's not present everywhere, which is again 1 point for UX, 5 points for UI out of a total of 20, because yes, we had to break the two apart, because yes, the site was breaking my brain apart. No consideration whatsoever about going from the funnel page, the e-commerce page, back to the home page. That's just not present, and it's very, very nervous and very, very confusing when you get started thinking about that. So with that said, I am very confused at this site. The next site that we're talking about, canvascreative.co. With that said, can anyone rate the Backstage Bon Jovi site for me as well? What are your thoughts on this? Because I am very, very, very confused at the entirety of this site even after it has ended. The next site that we're talking about, canvascreative.co. What's going to happen with this one? I have high hopes. Do you have high hopes? Because that has been a disappointing hope to have, especially in the recent stream of things. You get to see a fancy hero section element which has a video playing in the background. You can kind of explore around on it. Super cool as an effect. And yet, I do have my questions on what's going to happen now, especially because the last site has been no good precedent for any of these new sites that come along. Again, they do have text which can be selected, but the way they've done this is they've not only put a weird blurry drop shadow which makes everything look blurry, which would have been fine because you can read it for the most part, but also it makes me doubt whether I have blurry vision, which is a bad question if your users are all having that question. And also a very interesting third fact, did you know they didn't type this text out as canvas is an interactive design and something? They actually took apart each of these text boxes, each of these alphabets of each word, and they've put it in separate boxes. Did you know that? Because I have a way of proving it. Canvas is an interactive, this kind of a double spacey thing only happens when you've taken apart each little box of alphabet and broken it apart and tried to artificially put all of these in, which might seem fine to you, but it's absolutely horrible when you start thinking about accessibility, because browsers, when they're trying to rank it in SEO, are not going to take Canvas as an interactive design and development studio and show it to Google. They're going to show to Google, to the web crawler, CANVAS, which is horrible, especially if this is how hard you're working on your site. Like, it's just another level of horrible. And they do show you their case studies very quickly. The layout does repeat there very well, and you do get a bunch of elements which are taking their own scroll journey with parallax on the right side. It's great, the fact that they've taken all of these elements, made them work together, but also very confusing now because, again, like the previous site, there is no clear explanation when we got into these about what's happening, how it's happening. I would have expected a simple line of what this project is, because people won't come into your world knowing what the Zero Motorcycles website is, they do want a single line, not very long, but a single line of explanation on what you did, how you did, why you did. And images and videos at some point will stop sufficing. And that's the concern that I have with this site and with the case study. I think finesse is definitely something they did lack here, which is why I am as shocked as I am. And they do get to a point where they're putting forward their strategy, design, development in a very clear fashion, but is it the most intriguing fashion UI wise? No. They do get user experience to a certain point, but that gets dropped off when browser SEO starts being the point of consideration. They do know how to make a UI, but whatever this weird grid is, it's very, very confusing. And I'm not even zooming in with any fancy browser zooms. So this is very, very unnerving to me. Even if you have a bunch of projects, wasn't there some way of putting it into like pagination? Because the way they've done this is very, very weird. I get the fact that they've tried to put in filters and then tried to do all, but the fact that they've just made these microscopically small and you can't even hover over one of them without this giant thing taking over and you're not able to see what's going on in the background is just horrible user experience. Again, very, very horrible. And you get to see the last thing that we did over here at the top get repeated, but also is it very pretty looking? No, because there is no color, there is no image, there is no icon, plain text, which gets boring quicker than you realize. Again, the effects that we were talking about in the hero section, they've taken all of these different alphabets, put them in the background instead of typing out user reviews. I have reasons to believe that they've put out USERRAVIWS, which will become a headache when Google starts to be the thing they want to rank themselves in. They've taken a bunch of these reviews, put them forward, which is nice. They do keep on scrolling them in their own speed and you can scroll along if you want to. I would have wanted to see a cursor hijack that said scroll me or something like that, especially when you hovered over these. Is for a brand that does this cursor hijack this hard, you would want to see that happen when you need to be able to scrolling these things. Again, you had all the skills and yet you put the wrong skills in the wrong place, and now this has become confusion land. So that is my entire review for this site. You had all the skills, had all the elements, put the wrong thing in the wrong place, and now it's a very confusing site. Properly for feeling balanced and functional. At this point, I don't even know what is supposed to be read first, and they've tried to put in every single element and yet it does not work out. I have to give this site a 2 out of 10 because yes, they tried to put in all the elements. This was a very, very cool effect. For the record, you could have put a weird video in the background and you can see it, but the way they've put in the frame is just very small for even being able to see anything at all. And this is a simple contact form that they've hijacked, put in a bunch of text, but the lack of icons, lack of color, lack of images just makes you disappointed at the entirety of this thing. You get to see another work section highlighting the same exact elements that they did before, and it's still very confusing because A, you can't hover over anything cleanly. B, when you do, you're not able to see anything else. This is genuinely difficult to understand. Canvas, 2 out of 10. The next site that we're talking about is going to be Nomo Agency. And the reason I'm really happy talking about Nomo Agency, if you've already seen these streams, is because we've taken projects that Nomo built and talked about them on stream, and they've always been very, very good projects. So I am interested in seeing what the mother brand of a bunch of Nomo Agency projects, and let me know if you remember any Nomo Agency projects, because I remember a lot of them, and all of them have a similar vibe. So let's see what happens. Nomo Agency, again, you get to see a couple of 3D elements with shaders that show you the text that's in the background. It does work really, really well, and yet, as soon as you start scrolling, defying every expectation that we had, it's kind of starting to scroll in a different direction, and the Nomo octopus comes out. Either we've already seen a different project by Nomo which had the same exact octopus and it changed colors, or I'm just having a serious case of deja vu, because I think we've already seen these elements from Nomo. I think one of these streams, a couple of streams ago, if you go into the live section of this channel, you'll get to see a literal thumbnail using this when we were reviewing this exact octopus, but it was in the case study projects of Nomo, which is Nomo Labs, and I'm talking about the fact that I've already seen many of these projects before. This is a different project, and this site seems to be an aggregation of every single project that they did, some of which we've already reviewed, and the theme kind of is consistent everywhere they go. again, the fact that they have used 3D models, broken things apart, or even video with shaders is absolutely incredible. And the fact that you never know what's coming when you start to scroll things is absolutely incredible, because when we started, I was kind of scrolling downwards, and yet the scroll on the screen went upwards, which is throwing off your expectations, surprising you with something new, and now you get to be happy. You get to see a bunch of text, you get to see a bunch of these elements, and they take up exactly the space that they need to. They take up exactly the area, the color, the layout, the way things would supposed to be. You get to see a video, you get to have access to one of these projects, work with them, play around with them if you want to. And yet this is an underwhelming project considering it's coming from Nomo. I think that has to be the simple fact I have to mention. They do put forward their testimonials very, very easily. They do put forward everything that they need to put very, very quickly. There is a lot of 3D elements popping up exactly as they need to, and yet this is a very uncomfortable site, which I am just going to say blandly, because things just come up whenever they want to come up. There is no prior expectation, no descriptions whatsoever, and I think that's exactly what's throwing me off balance. Huge chunks of text are just thrown off wherever you'd want to throw them off, which seems like me discounting the effort that went into this site, but also it's not, because you're trying to take apart all of these elements, make some sense, and everything is just thrown here on the screen, and it makes me very, very bothered personally. And then you get to see the same exact card for the same exact projects kind of repeated over and over again. This is not what I expected from Nomo Labs. This is a bunch of text just put on your face, images not where they're supposed to be, color is kind of missing, you have a gradient in the background and that stays consistent, but it's very underwhelming considering the fact that they took a bunch of text and just throwed them on your face. Not the best site I've seen from Nomo agency, and it does make me a little bit worried at the direction of this entire thing. I would rate this site a 4 out of 10 because yes, there was enormous effort that went into making something like this. But if you go check out Nomo Labs, this exact project that they work with, and we've reviewed it on a stream a couple of streams ago, I think things were much different, and already the expectation that I came in with was much higher, and this seems to be a little bit of a disappointment when you start to take the thoughts that I had last time. The next site that we're reviewing, which is the last site that we're reviewing today, is straightfire.io. Let's see what happens with this one. Alright, I have no idea what's going to happen this time. This is supposed to be a gaming cyberpunk theme of a site, but again, anything could happen at this point because worlds are falling apart right now. You have the ability to look at, and also very clear text as to what's going on with this brand, and you get to go. And that makes a comeback here, but they've kind of modified it by taking apart every single edge of a bento grid, making it work in real time with a slight of what to expect, and that's what's throwing me off about it as a whole. Investors, wow, brands, I would have wanted to see these be a little bit more brighter, because if you have great brands, why not show them off? Very weird the way they've placed it, because you only get to see the light of the entire logo when you kind of hover over it, which is weird. You get to see their partners, absolutely incredible. They have their team credits, famous games, famous brands, everything that you'd want to have. I think the fact that they are related to the gaming industry and let their site be very related to the field of gaming, even if it's a little bit difficult to understand, even if it's a little bit esoteric at first, is really nice. And you get to see the Join Our Community continued banner, which is also from the gaming industry, but it does a really good job with the old school hardcore gamer market, if that's really the place they're standing at. So I think from the place that they're standing at, it's an absolutely incredible site, which is what makes me let go of my own things that I had in my head as an expectation from a simple site of gaming. I think this is the footer, and if you just throw away everything else and look at the way they've implemented it with the social media and with the ability to kind of zoom in as you'd want to, clean titles, they tell you what they want to do, fonts are on brand, borders cut off, chop off, but they're still continuing to be on brand. Everything is exactly as you'd expect it to be, and everything works exactly as you'd want it to be. The copyright here hasn't been changed, but it's something that all of us forget. And this is enough for me to say that this is a 10 out of 10 site, especially if you look at the fact that this is coming from the gaming industry. I think something incredible about the site is no matter what you take as an element of the site, even if you take the menu, even if you take something else, everything is very on brand for the place that they come from, which shows me they really, really know the UI of the gaming world as a whole, and they've not dropped it even when they came into the world of web, which is really good UI knowledge. And you can kind of see that over and over again when you start to scroll. And with that said, this is an incredible site, and I have to point out, every single site that we've been seeing on today's stream, on all of these streams, makes me want to simply say either the sites that you see on these streams are the best sites you've ever seen in the world, or the sites that you do see are the worst sites in the world, which is a double-edged sword. Some of these sites that we saw here today were just 2 out of 10. Throw this in the trash. I cannot bear to see it. Some of these do a really, really good job with tying everything together. So, these live streams are a mixed blanket. The sites that we see, especially coming from awwwards.com, coming from the fancy world of very, very fancy looking sites, are a really double-edged sword. You can't ever sit there and say this is a 5 out of 10 site, 7 out of 10 site. It's okay. It always gets a bit of an extreme reaction because every person who's in the world of building out perfect sites is either doing a really good job at the fancy stuff, or they're just not doing a good job that's acceptable at all, and that's what gets our extreme reactions. But also it gives us a really good opportunity to look at and learn the fancy new things that work, and to really be able to understand what goes into these sites, what we should do, what we shouldn't do as people in the field of UI UX design. I will see you tomorrow. We'll talk about 6 more incredible sites, what went right, what went wrong. Until then, keep on designing, have fun, good night. I'm live here every single day at 9 p.m. Indian Standard Time or 3:30 p.m. GMT. I will see you tomorrow.